Hi, this is part of the instructional video series for the Strategic Decarbonization Assessment Tool, or SDA Tool, being used for the NYSERDA Empire Building Challenge program. This is video 3 of 4, and in this section, we'll be reviewing the Narrative and Measures tab, in which you'll define potential future scenarios for your facility and enter potential retrofit or operational measures and other actions needed to achieve those scenarios. The Narrative and Measures tab is broken into two sections. In the top section, you'll write in narrative descriptions of the scenarios that you're considering for your facility. And in the bottom section, you'll enter different ECMs, energy conservation measures, or other actions that you want to evaluate at your facility, as well as cost and savings information about those measures. The tool automatically creates two baseline scenarios against which your potential future scenarios are evaluated. These scenarios represent a business as usual approach. No changes in terms of maintenance or operations at your facility, treatment only of emergency or life safety items, and equipment replacement only at the end of equipment life with marginally more efficient equipment, like for like. The baseline scenarios are generated using your current operational information and your operating statement, which you entered in the Building Info and Assumptions tab, as well as your current equipment inventory and expected remaining useful life, which you entered in the Equipment Inventory tab. There are two baseline or business as usual scenarios that are automatically calculated by the tool. One of them assumes no compliance with future emissions mandates, such as Local Law 97. Therefore, it automatically calculates payment of fines associated with those emissions. The second baseline scenario assumes no proactive compliance with future emissions mandates, but compliance entirely through the purchase of carbon offsets. You can also define up to 3 alternate future scenarios. And in these scenarios, you'll then assign different measures according to what you want to see. We'll get into this a little bit more in the Scenarios tab, but here, for the purposes of this example, we've defined 3 different potential future scenarios. The first, rapid deep electrification retrofit, which includes comprehensive fuel switching and equipment replacement needed to achieve deep carbon savings. A phased compliance approach, which achieves electrification, but on a slightly longer timescale with lower cost or no cost measures up front. And then finally, an efficiency-only path forward, which assumes no proactive electrification and implementation only of low-cost or no-cost retrocommissioning or other energy conservation measures. Getting down into the ECM table. First, for each ECM, you'll want to enter the measure description, and then pick the category that the ECM falls into. I'll get into the ECM categories in more detail in a minute. You'll then enter all of the energy and cost information associated with that measure. For example, any peak demand savings, electricity savings, natural gas or steam, chilled water, or any other fuel savings associated with the measure. You'll need to pick from a drop-down menu the savings profile, both on a daily basis, i.e. is it something that saves energy in the morning or in the afternoon? And then a seasonal savings profile. Is it something that saves energy in the summer, in the winter, or constant throughout the year? You can also enter any non-energy related annual cost savings or deltas, such as O&M costs associated with a measure. Over on the right, you'll enter the measure capital cost, any one-time rebates or incentives that you expect to receive, and then finally the measure life. The measure life is important to enter because it indicates the duration of the savings. For example, replacing a piece of equipment with another piece of equipment that has an expected lifetime of 10 years means that the savings associated with that replacement will probably be durable for that whole 10-year period. Whereas measures like retrocommissioning or tune-ups really only persist for a year or two, a much shorter period of time. And those savings are then indicated in the Scenarios tab and in the back-end calculations of the tool when you look at the future operation of your building. Going back over to the left, let's talk a little bit about the ECM categories and what they mean for the tool's calculations. Most of the measures that you're looking at are probably going to be standard ECMs, measures that just save energy. You may also have some measures that either represent deferred maintenance or immediate repairs, such as life safety and critical items. These get inserted back into the baseline in business as usual scenarios because we assume that they're things that you would need to do at your facility, regardless of whatever your future scenario is. You can also enter carbon offsets as a distinct measure. This is a proactive carbon offset purchase. For example, if you have a certain amount of funding set aside to purchase carbon offsets every year. If you're entering carbon offsets as a measure, you obviously don't need to indicate any particular energy savings associated with that measure, but you will need to enter the capital cost associated with that purchase, as well as a lifetime, which indicates for how many years you plan to purchase those offsets, 1 year, 2 years, or more. Finally, you have an option to indicate a storage or load shifting measure. This, for example, is a measure like ice storage or battery storage, which doesn't save energy on its own, but does save cost by shifting energy from an expensive peak period to a less expensive off-peak period. In this case, you may not enter any kind of energy savings, or if you do, they may be minimal associated with the measure, but you will be able to enter cost savings associated with that measure based on how much money you think you'll be able to save by implementing that load shifting. Finally, an important note about electrification or fuel switching measures specifically. For electrification or fuel switching measures, you'll be replacing a piece of equipment that uses one kind of fuel with a piece of equipment that uses a different kind of fuel, probably replacing a gas or steam using piece of equipment with an electricity using piece of equipment. In this case, it's important to make sure that not only do you indicate the savings in terms of gas or steam or other fuels at the building, but you also need to indicate the increase in electricity and power that you think will be expected by that equipment replacement. And you can do this by putting in a negative number in the peak demand savings or electricity savings column. And that's the end of the Narrative and Measures tab.